Welcome to episode 4 of the Bulls REKAP Podcast. I'm Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times. You can check me out, obviously, in the Chicago Sun-Times sports section, or you could follow me on Twitter. I wouldn't advise it. It's not the most fun follow, but it's at @JCowleyHoops. This is my flu game, obviously. As you can tell, I'm not in the greatest shape right now, so I'll bring in my Scottie Pippen that's going to help me through this, Mr. Will Gottlieb of CHGO. And here's the reason we like Will. Casey and I talk about this a lot, that in journalism, there's a lot of younger journalists that don't love asking the tough question. And I don't know if it's generational. I don't know if it's just we're two old curmudgeons and that's just, our reality is based in what we're seeing and hearing. But Will is not afraid of that. Will knows how I feel about him. I think I'm excited of the future of journalism when I see a guy like Will. But let's get right into it. So yesterday, here's the thing that bothered me the most. So Casey and I are talking to someone from the Wizards, and he's like, hey, we know we made a lot of mistakes. This is a 2-year sink job. Now, obviously, they can't admit that publicly, but they're not only looking to tank this year, they're looking at that next year class, that 26 class, which some people believe might not have a Cooper flag, but has 3 dudes at the top that are, game changers. So they're looking at it. If we can't hit it this year, we are going to try hitting it next year. Now, when the Wizards are out thinking you and out scheming you as an organization, you need to be concerned. So it's funny because Will and I both had the same takeaway from that game. It's nice for the cup, put you in position for the cup, at least to make some noise this year. But big picture, bad win. It's a bad win, Will.
Yeah, well, first of all, Joe, thanks for having me on. I appreciate the kind words. And I'll also add that there's a lot of people, like in my mentions, every time we go into like a post-trade deadline media session with Arturas or postseason or whatever, and they're like, you guys got to hold these guys accountable. They don't know what they're doing. You got to hold them accountable. And I feel like people don't understand that Joe Cowley is one of the best at doing that. So I learned it from you. I appreciate you. And I think whenever the day comes where you decide to hang it up, there's going to be a lot of Bulls fans that miss out on that, because I think
it might be in about a half hour, to be honest with you.
Hopefully not. Hopefully you can make it through this flu game. But yeah, I mean, look, this season is the Bulls are better than I thought they're going to be. We can start there. Like I came into the season projecting them to finish around where Vegas had them, which was 27 wins. And already they're 8-11. They got Orlando tonight. Maybe they'll lose that game. Orlando's a good team, but they've already beaten them once this year.
Right.
And
right.
I just, I wonder, I know that they are changing directions here. I know that they are trying to go in the direction of the lottery and getting those ping pong balls, but they're off to a shaky start with that. And I think, it's not red alert time just yet, but I mean, you can raise the concern flags, and I've been doing that, as have you.
Yeah. So, I think they understand. I mean, people don't understand that we've had, there's been some private get-togethers that they have with the media, and there's a lot of talk. Not so much maybe with AK. I think he kind of holds his cards close to his vest, but there's more of AK, Arturas Karnisovas, kind of listening at least to what we're saying. I don't think he, at the end of the day, maybe even gives a damn, but he fakes it well if that exactly. I think they understand the importance of keeping that top 10 pick. I think they understand, and as an organization, that until they get that dude, they are middling. I just don't know if they understand how to the pain that it requires. I mean, you watch Washington, that's a painful team to watch. But I will say this, this year's draft was not a great draft. I like some of the pieces they got. I was surprised by Sarr, how well he moves, how athletic he is, how aware he is of his size. And obviously, Vooch put him in the rinse cycle a couple times, and that's just a veteran taking advantage of a rookie. But I mean, I look at him, I think he's going to be a good shot blocker. I think he's going to be just a nice piece. If you could land a Cooper Flagg or an Ace Bailey, or looking ahead to next season, AJ DiBonza, Cameron Boozer, Peterson, the other kid Peterson. I mean, those are the 26 class. Those are the top 3 guys, and people are already excited about that group. So, if you have those pieces that they have, they added Carrington and Sarr, and then all of a sudden they hit one. Even if they hit one, you're in pretty good shape. You can get off of Kuzma. You can move off some of the ugliness you've gone through, but there's a pain that you have to withstand as an organization. And I just don't know if AK and Mark Eversley are wired to want to go through that pain.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between like understanding what the best path forward is and like actually being willing to do what is necessary in order to get there. And that's the part where, again, I'm not like, they haven't won 38 games yet, so it's not at that point, but it's certainly trending that way. And I totally agree. I mean, you do have to go through that. And I think the smart teams really try to go through it quickly and put it behind them. And I appreciate that the Bulls aren't trying to do this like full tear down. I mean, they could have, attached assets to Zach and to Vooch in order to move them and really improve the value of their own pick this year. That's, there's problems with that path too. But I just think that, look, I mean, they need to get this right. And if you do, you're cooking, right? Like you've got some good young players to pair with a Cooper Flagg, let's say. You've got Io, you've got Kobe under contract. Mattis, I think, has looked really interesting. Obviously, a ton of time left before he turns into what he eventually becomes. But like you've got the foundation of some good players alongside that dude. But as you say, they need that dude. And you can't like mess around with 1 foot in, 1 foot out and risk your chance of missing out on that guy, because that's how you end up back in the middle, which is where they just were and where they wanted to get out of. But it seems to me like they're kind of, whether or not they say it or know it or are doing it intentionally, like they kind of are getting themselves back on that path. And that's really dangerous. I think it deserves to be called out.
And meanwhile, the biggest winner, I think, so far this season is Billy Donovan. I mean, he totally redoes. He's been, I mean, you talk about coaching your ass off. I always consider, and I don't think this has changed. I consider Billy, I've got that first tier of coaches, Spo, Tibbs. I don't think Pop's in there anymore. I've never put Kerr in there. I think Kerr, I would have loved to see if Kerr took the New York job. Because if Kerr would have taken the New York job, then Fred Hoiberg would have taken, Golden State was going to hire him. And I wonder if that would have rewritten his history. So, I mean, it's just funny how things, I think Ron Adams has been the MVP of that Golden State coaching staff. But you definitely have your elite coaches, and then you have that second tier, your next 5 to 7 coaches. And I think Billy is showing he is in that second tier to totally redo this offense. And, I mean, you're not talking a small facelift. You're talking about philosophically changing how you've been playing since you've been in Chicago, because you knew your personnel and you knew what you needed to do. I mean, Billy Donovan's not really getting enough credit for what he's doing with, which I think is a very flawed roster to even won, the games they've won and even come back and been close to winning some of those games, tells me that they're playing for Billy. And also Billy kind of knows what he's doing a little bit.
Absolutely, man. I really admire the way that Billy has turned this thing around and just changed, like you said, their whole identity. I mean, you spend the last 2 years walking it up the court, getting to your spots at the elbow, letting DeMar operate and do what he does best, which was incredible. I mean, we all saw it. Not to take away anything from his greatness, but when you don't have that anymore, you have to figure out another way. And so you go from this slow, offensive rebounding, mid-range oriented team into this, the fastest paced team in the league. You're shooting more threes than you ever have in franchise history. I think Billy deserves a lot of credit for that. And I'm with you too. I think like there's probably, 3 to maybe 6 or 7 coaches at the top of the league who really truly make a difference in terms of adding wins to your team. And there's maybe like 1 or 2 at the bottom who are hurting you. And that number's gotten smaller over the years. I think just generally speaking, coaches in the NBA are much better than they ever have been. But everybody else is just kind of in the middle. And I think Billy is kind of rising up the ranks in that middle group to where, he's impacting winning. Like he has found a formula that is putting the Bulls in this situation, which is what we were just talking about before. They're too good for their own good. Like that's, I think you really have to credit Billy there for having the vision, understanding his personnel and being able to adapt to it. That's not something that, you see a lot of coaches, they're really stubborn. They want to play their style of basketball. They want their system. And Billy is not that guy. I mean, he has completely changed this team identity-wise, and it's really impressive to just see the complete overhaul from year to year.
And fans, I think, have to understand, coaches don't tank. There's no coach that's tanking. Players don't tank. Coaches don't tank. They don't give a shit about draft picks, future. They are playing for that, what ends up on their basketball card or their resume, their coaching resume that year. They don't care about Cooper Flag. They don't care about, I mean, that's just not how it works. Front offices tank. You brought up Modest. 3-game stretch now where he's obviously his minutes have been upped because of the injury to Patrick Williams. Yesterday, it wasn't his career high. I think he ended up with 9. But yesterday, the things I really liked about him, he doesn't hesitate to shoot from outside. And he showed off some ball handling yesterday, which I really liked because I think he has that. And Billy, I asked Billy last week about what we're not seeing in games from Modest that they see in practice or shoot-arounds, or it's a 5-on-5 scrimmages after shoot-arounds because they don't practice that much. And one of the things he talked about was his aggressiveness, his ball handling. So those are things we know he has and the organization knows he has. But where are you at right now with Modest and his growing game, both offensively and defensively?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see more of him for one. I know that over the course of the season, and they don't want to like rush him into anything. They don't want to overburden him with too much too early so that he gets rattled or loses confidence. But I agree with you, man. His superpower is his confidence right now. And I think they should be feeding that. I get it. Like the physicality piece is just not quite there yet. Like he's super thin. I was just talking with him in Milwaukee the other week about like how much he's eating and how he's trying to put on weight and how that's a challenge just with the amount of calories he's burning in season right now. He's going down to Windy City and playing games. He's practicing. He's playing games up here. He's working out. So I think he's doing everything he can, but I just think like that skill set is really unique. He's a 6'10" wing who has ball handling skills. I think we saw a lot more of it in summer league where he's taking some threes, he's running some pick and roll, and like you can kind of imagine him turning into more of that big wing initiator, which is what every team in this league needs to build around. So that part of it's really exciting, and I think you'll see more and more of that as the season progresses. The jump shot is starting to come together a little bit. I think his like core and base strength is something that's going to help there when he improves that. But the other thing he was saying is like it's a 4-foot difference between the high school 3-point line and the NBA 3-point line. He's a skinny guy. He's not super strong yet. Like that's a big difference. And so I think once he adds some strength and more of a foundation to his jump shot, that will improve. But like the mechanics are there. You can see he's a shooter. There's a shooter in there. And then defensively, I mean, he's been elite protecting the rim, blocking shots, switching on the perimeter and blocking shots, recovering, coming over and stepping over as the low man and protecting the rim. I mean, he's just got some really special defensive instincts when it comes to protecting the rim. And that's something that the Bulls don't have right now. I mean, Vooch, I think has been, the fan base has been overly critical with him as a defensive player. I mean, he's defended the scheme as well as he can, and obviously he's limited, but this team was a top 5 defense 2 years ago with him playing heavy minutes. So that tells you he can perform in a scheme, but they don't have that premier rim protector. And I think Modest can do some of that as kind of like the low man, the 4 who can slide over and help kind of insulate against that when Vooch is up containing and pick and roll.
The thing that kind of struck me yesterday, obviously it was their second win in their last 3 games. They beat Atlanta, then they lost to Memphis, I believe, and then they go ahead and take care of bum-ass Washington. But the thing that struck me is when Patrick Williams is out there, sometimes you don't really even think about him. And that's not what you want to say about a number 4 draft pick that you've given excuse after excuse after excuse, and then you extend it for 5 years and $90 million, which is financially it's a good deal. It's not like he broke the bank, but I believe the last year is his option, correct?
Yeah.
And so, you've done that again. You've given the power to the player, which you might not have had to do. And I was like, oh yeah, they won 2 out of 3 games without Patrick Williams, and you really didn't kind of think about him. It was more about how Modest is playing and what that 4-guard approach looks like with Isle starting in P. Will's place. Where are you at with him? Have you kind of lost patience with him, or are you willing to for me, I look at first of all, he's a great kid, but I look at like his physical build, and you're like, man, there's so much there. And when he flashes, and then but there's been so many teases where it's like, oh, this was the game. Now he's getting it. He rebounded. He actually rebounded and he scored. He was aggressive. He wasn't just a passenger. And then the next game, he just kind of lets you down. He doesn't build anything off of it. Like we just talked about Modest. It feels like Modest is building off of performances. P. Will, it feels like, has never built off any performances. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting contrast when you think about, like I mentioned, Modest and his confidence. Like, I don't know what happened over the last 4 years with Patrick. And, I've tried to like talk with him a little bit about this and haven't really gotten much out of him because it's just a tough thing, I think, to talk about. But he's not like the same. Something happened between his rookie year and now where he's just not like even performing at the same level as he was then or showing some of those same flashes. I mean, the ball handling to me was something that was really interesting for him coming out of college and his rookie year. Now it's like every time he touches
it's terrible.
Foot.
It's terrible.
And
it's
I
terrible.
just don't know how he could kind of regress in that way. So it's definitely disappointing when you draft a guy really highly, you invest a lot of your resources and future into that, and then it doesn't really pan out. I still think Patrick is like a good player. I think there's a lot of stuff that he does that just watching a game, like a casual fan isn't going to notice because it's like just being in the right spot defensively, doing kind of some of the smaller things that don't show up in the box score that this team really needs. Like they don't really have a big wing that can handle, the Kawhi Leonards or LeBron Jameses or Jason Tatum's of the world. And Patrick can kind of do that, but that's more just about like his body, like you said, than his skill set. And so, clearly he had a couple of really nice games there right before he hurt the foot again this last time. So maybe he can start to build off that when he comes back. But then you factor in the surgery, missing the whole season, coming back, and then still not being totally healthy. I think that's pretty concerning. I think Patrick is like a very good 3-and-D wing in this league. I think that's like a very important player to have, a important archetype to have on your roster. But I don't think we're at a point now where you can say, look, there's so much more shot creation in his game. He can turn into the next Kawhi. Like, I just think that is kind of out the door. And not to say he can never do that, but he just hasn't given us enough to make me feel like that's still there. And maybe I would love to be proven wrong on that because I love talking Pat too. I think he's a great guy. But just, I don't know what happened with, this core of Zach and Vooch and DeMar and him kind of having to defer to those guys. It just doesn't feel like he really ever put it together. And I think in some ways he kind of regressed.
So on the New York Cleveland trip, he had a great game in New York, and Zach was raving about him after the game. And he said, "Ooh, Patrick," and just talking about how well he played on both ends of the floor. So I grabbed Patrick in Cleveland at the shoot around, and I even said to him, I said, "Don't when you're watching film, can't you pull back and watch that guy that's wearing your jersey's number and go, oh man, he can do some scary things." And he interrupted me and he looked at me and he goes, "You know what? I am scary." And I was like, there you go. Can be. Then he gets hurt. Like two games later, he gets hurt. So to your point, it felt like he was finally starting to do something that we could feel good about, but more importantly, that he could feel good about. And then there's another setback with the injury. So
and to me, Billy says this all the time. It's like Patrick hitting his threes is great. Like when he's doing that, that's what you want, obviously. Yeah. But it's like other stuff. It's like attacking the rim, getting to the foul line. He's got a nice pull-up jumper, but like, can you get all the way to the rim and just finish there? He's obviously had the missed dunks and people are talking about that, but like, I just want to see him get to the free throw line and draw fouls and be aggressive, getting to the basket and making plays. We've seen some of his passing at times. Like he's got some tools, but to your point, I just feel like it's been hard to be consistently growing with that when you're missing time, when you're maybe losing confidence. I don't think he would really admit to that, but from an outsider's perspective, that's kind of what it feels like. And that's how you, I think, lose that momentum.
All right, so here's what I know: nobody smashes the trade machine more than Will Gottlieb. You love the trade machine.
It's my specialty, Jack.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go down a list of players, and these are nobody on this team is untradeable. Nobody is untouchable. So let's rule that out. Let's just say, from what you've seen from these guys, Do you believe enough in him where you would trade him, or you would rather keep him? All right. So we'll do it that way. Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, I think if you can get something positive for him, you should. I mean, he's obviously been an incredible player, but with the injuries and even coming back and having another injury, it's just hard to bank on that. You've already picked kind of a different direction. He's young enough where, like, in theory, he could maybe fit alongside that new timeline, but a new contract, are you really willing to reinvest in him? I mean, there'd probably be like some injury protections in there. If you can get a pick for him, or even like take back some bad salary or like 2 years worth of salary and get a pick to do that's the direction I would be going with Lonzo. As great as it's been to see him back. And like you said, I mean, obviously nothing personal with any of these guys. It's just the reality.
No.
They are going a different direction, and you have to be realistic with that. Modest is the one guy I would probably want to explore a little bit, just because, like, if you think about this roster and like we talked about, you're trying to find that guy. I don't know if there's a player other than Modest on this team that could potentially get there. And not to say that's a guarantee or anything like that, but just his
but we've seen the ceiling. We've seen the ceiling on everybody else besides him.
Exactly. You've seen the ceiling on, and Kobe's been phenomenal. Io's been fantastic. Zach is playing like an all-star again. Vooch is playing like an all-star again. But like, in terms of young, potential, future-oriented guys, Modest is maybe the most upside on the team. And that's the guy I would be looking to explore and just seeing what he can turn into more than probably anybody else on this team right
now. Zach and Vooch, obviously, both to me are both tradable pieces. I think everybody agrees with that, as well as they're both playing, as well as they're handling the situation.
And to your point, they are really handling the situation well. Like they deserve
phenomenal. Yeah, I didn't know what kind of Zach we would get, and Zach's been phenomenal. Vooch, they've both been phenomenal.
Ton of respect for the way that they've handled the situation.
Yeah. Josh Giddey.
I mean, you're not going to get, if you trade Giddey, you're not going to get as much as you gave up for him, right? So you're already looking at him, being kind of a negative asset in that way. If you can get something positive for him, I would definitely explore it. Otherwise, like, you're looking at potentially overpaying him on a long-term deal, and that can be like,
what do you think they're going to pay? What do you think they're going to pay for him? What do you think they're going to pay, and what would you be comfortable paying?
So, I mean, the rumor was he was looking for Jalen Suggs money, right? And that's 5 years.
He wanted Jalen Suggs' contract. Yeah.
So that's 150.
I don't know if the years, but he wanted the 30 million. That I know. Okay.
And I mean, for his perspective, like, that's what he should have been asking for. That's what the guys in his range were getting. Now, I don't think he's worth that. I don't think he's played to that point. If you can re-sign him for like 3, 4, 5 years at like somewhere in the 15 to 20 range, I would probably be comfortable with that, because I think that's movable long-term. But like, I guess the concern there is, okay, if the negotiation between the Bulls and Giddey was in the 25 to 30 million range, then are you going to pick up negotiations where you left off and just get the lower end of that range? Or are you going to reset based on what we've seen this year, which so far has not been very good? And do you try to get that number way down to where it's like market value? I don't know what the answer to that is. And obviously there's, 65 more games for them to evaluate this thing. But to me right now, it's like the 15 to 20 million range. And other than that, like, I'd be looking to find a way to get some positive value if you can. And I don't know that would be the case even.
And then finally, where are you at with Io and Kobe? Or
those are the top
tradable pieces. Yeah,
those are
tough.
But for me, I would be looking to trade both of them. I think you have to, at this point, like, understand. I mean, look, they're 8-11 right now, and you've got two guys playing at an all-star level, Zach and Vooch. And so remove them from the equation. Like, what kind of a team are you? And if Kobe and Io can't be like the number 2 and number 3 on a great team, because even if you find that number 1 guy in this draft, like, how far away are you still? And so this is the time in their contracts when they're going to have the most value. They've got a year and a half left on really incredible deals. Like, Arturas has done a lot of bad. These have been some of his best moves, is signing those guys to the deals that they're on. So if you can get multiple picks for each of those, I would definitely be considering it. But I think there's also a plan or a pathway moving forward where you kind of bottom out this year and next year, make sure you keep those draft picks and get good players. And then in 2 years, you use the low cap holds on those guys, you become a cap space team and you sign a free agent, retain them. And now you've kind of got yourself in a situation where you've got some good young players, you've got some veterans that have grown up with you, and you've got cap space to be able to do some damage. So I could be convinced either way on those guys, but I do think you could get a lot for them. And that's what they should be doing right now. They should be getting draft picks and building for the future.
Yeah, Will, awesome stuff, buddy. That's why I like having you on. Smart stuff, Will.
Anytime, Joe. It's great chatting with you.
Obviously, CHGO, that's your main stomping grounds. People, please check him out there. Check out all the boys. Peck. I mean, I should have Peck on here one time.
Yeah, they both I'm in the offices right now. They both said to say hi.
Yeah, tell them I said hi. Love those dudes. Funny guys. Dude, thanks for doing this. I wish I felt a little bit better and had a little more energy.
Sorry, but happy to come on anytime, Joe.
All right, take care, man. Will, young Will, love it. Smart, gets it, understands the money, understands flexibility, how you get that flexibility, how to build a team, how to build a roster. Maybe the Bulls should hire him. No, and you know, the one thing, I'm not going to go on a rant this week because it is the holidays, so we'll stay off Cowley Island this week. But the one thing yesterday, or in DC, that stood out was that organization understanding that this is going to be bad. You know, obviously there's other things going on with the Wizards. Are they going to move? Are they going to go and play in a new arena in Virginia? Do they have to have superstars ready to go in that new arena? So, I mean, obviously there's other things going on. But the idea that their fan base holds their front office more accountable than the Bulls fan base holds the Bulls front office, that's not true. I don't think either fan base really is cutthroat and is holding the front office to, you have to fix this as soon as possible. There's a standard here and you're not living up to the standard. To me, they're both fan bases that are very similar. They're big markets, but both fan bases have understanding of what they need to become relevant again. And you have one front office that's willing to jump in that swimming pool and go ahead and do it. And you have a Bulls front office that might be reluctant to do that. So before I get out of here, I'd like to do a list. I was thinking about this the other day because Billy was talking about Caruso. He can't quit Caruso. It's hard for all of us to quit Caruso, as we're finding out. But he was just talking about how Alex, as good as a defender as we thought he was, just watching him, when they would watch film, the miscommunications that he fixed and erased was unbelievable. I mean, there were so many mess ups defensively. Even 2 years ago when they were a top five defense, there were tons of mistakes made in the communication of guys thinking they have to be here. And he covered up so many of them. And Billy was talking about that, you know, we don't have Alex Caruso anymore, so we have to communicate. So these are the top 5 Bulls defenders, which is interesting since I've covered the team. My first year with the team was 2012. So that was the Derrick Rose. It was 2012-13. So it was the first year Derrick Rose, he was out the entire year with the ACL. So think about it then in that time frame. These were the 5 best Bulls defenders in my eyes that I watched, and I was like, yeah, that dude's different. Number 5, I'll go from 5 to 1. Taj Gibson. What I'm protector, but Taj could. The nice thing about Taj, you could switch, you could do whatever. He could guard anybody, a center, a point guard, a 2 guard. Kirk Heinrich. There are dudes that still talk about the most annoying guy, and obviously he couldn't switch on the bigger guys, but the most annoying guy to deal with was Kirk Heinrich defensively because of his physicality. He was just physical. He was just on you. You would feel him, and you would wear it. 3, I mean, obviously, if you win a Defensive Player of the Year, Joakim Noah. Again, could switch to guards, could guard bigs, shot blocker, rebounder, intimidator. So Noah is 3. Number 2, Jimmy Butler. I think Jimmy was fantastic. Probably top 3 defender. I don't think he got the awards that he should have gotten, but to a man when you talk to guys. Jimmy in his heyday, he's a little broken down now, but Jimmy in his heyday defensively was an SOB on you. And then number one, obviously the best defender. And it's not just the defense with Alex Caruso. It's not only deflect the ball, but chase the ball down, dive for it. Not only switch on a guy, but switch with impact and with force and make him feel it that, I'm not just going to, switch to the screen. I'm going to blow up this screen. I'm going to make life difficult for your guard to even get off this screen. So phenomenal defender. And I think we're seeing just how good of a defender he was based on with him gone, where the Bulls are defensively this season so far. So that's it for me. Got through the flu game. And we'll do this again next week. And remember, I got next.